The couple who killed their mother for money but her return shattered their empire. Morning rested gently over the village of Bukasa as soft mist lifted from the soil and the sun rose behind distant hills. The air carried the scent of wet earth after a night of slow rain. Birds moved over the roofs of old mud homes while the rhythm of hoes tapping distant gardens began to fill the quiet. Life in Bukasa always woke in a slow, peaceful stretch as if each day was an old friend returning. In the center of this village lived a couple known by many. Their home stood beside a narrow path that curved toward the lake. The husband, named Salongo, carried the pride of a man who believed the world would soon open to him. His wife Mirembe carried the grace of a woman who had known hunger and hardship yet held hope for better days. Together they lived inside a house built with patient hands and old timber, though the walls still showed cracks from many seasons. Let us move forward in the day. Smoke from morning fires rose in gentle lines above each homestead. Children prepared to leave for the village school, while goats bleated in their pens. Women tied cloth around their heads and went to fetch water from the borehole. The atmosphere of Bukasa felt calm, yet beneath its surface lay stories that only the wind understood. Salongo and Mirembe carried a quiet desire for progress. They dreamed of wealth that could lift them from the life they knew. Yet the path to that life required land, and the piece of land they wanted belonged to someone respected deeply in the village. That land was owned by Nakaten, the mother of Salongo. She lived on the far side of the village where tall banana trees made shade around her old home. Her garden stretched along a slope that held rich soil treasured by many farmers. Nakaten had grown old with the softness of a woman who had lived through countless rains. Her voice carried wisdom and patience. Many villagers visited her for guidance. Her land was fruitful and her presence was seen as a blessing. Yet Salongo saw something different. He saw potential wealth hidden in those fields. He knew buyers from the trading center were seeking farmland in Bukasa and prices were rising. With that land, he believed he could become a man of status. Now we step into the next moment. Nakatendi's health weakened slowly with age. Her steps grew slower. Her evenings grew quieter. She often sat outside her house watching the sky change its colors. Villagers greeted her with respect. Still, she carried the burden of feeling like a mother whose son no longer visited as often. The distance between them widened not because of conflict, but because ambition had built a silent wall around Salongo. Mirembe understood her husband's dreams. She also felt the weight of poverty pressing on their home. Nights often ended with faint hunger, though they worked hard each day. When Salongo whispered to her about taking control of his mother's land, she felt a storm rise inside her. Yet desperation shaped thoughts that she never imagined could form. She resisted the idea at first. She feared both the act and the shame that would follow. But each day, the dream of wealth pulled her deeper toward a path she did not want to follow. As the evening settled one quiet day, the couple sat by their fire. The flames rose slowly as if listening to their whispers. The sky above them carried stars that blinked through thin clouds. Salongo spoke with a low voice. His words carried no anger, only desire. He explained how the land could change their lives and how a chance like this might never come again. Mirembe listened with a trembling heart. Her voice answered in fragments shaped by fear and hunger. What began as hesitation grew into a dangerous thought. Days passed. Mirembe watched Nakaten from a distance as the old woman walked to her garden with a small calabash of water. She moved gently through her field, touching the leaves as if greeting them one by one. She spoke softly to the soil, as elders often do. Nothing about her movement suggested danger or suspicion. She trusted her son. She trusted the woman he married. She believed her old age would end in peace. Let us move forward in time. A dark idea settled inside the couple like a seed finding soil. They planned quietly. Their minds worked carefully to avoid attention. They chose a night when rain was expected and the village would stay indoors. They believed the storm would cover every sound. They believed the darkness would hide their shame. When the chosen night arrived, heavy clouds gathered over Bukasa. Lightning flashed behind the hills and thunder rolled through the valley. The rain began with slow drops that grew into steady sheets, falling over roofs and pathways. Most villagers stayed inside, warming themselves around their fires. The air outside felt heavy and cold. Salongo and Mirembe moved through the night with quiet steps. They walked along the path toward Nakatendi's home as the rain washed over their clothes. The village around them slept. Only the sound of raindrops touched the silence. Their hearts beat with fear, yet the promise of land pushed them forward. Nakaten sat inside her home, warming her hands near a small clay stove. The rain beat on her roof and wind whispered through the banana leaves. She did not expect visitors at that hour. When she heard a soft knock, she stood slowly and opened her door. She saw her son with wet clothes and a pale face. She welcomed him without hesitation. She welcomed Mirembe too and offered a stool near the fire. What followed moved with the quiet steps of betrayal. The couple acted fast and without words. The room held no witness. The rain drowned all cries. The night swallowed every trace. When the act was done, they carried Nakatendi's still body outside under the storm. They moved toward the forest edge where old trees stood like guards. They believed the rain would wash away every sign of their deed. When dawn finally touched the village, the couple returned home soaked and silent. No one saw them. No one suspected anything. Their faces carried exhaustion, yet they spoke to neighbors with steady voices. Villagers assumed they had simply worked late in their garden. No one knew that a mother had been taken from the world. As the days passed, the absence of Nakatend raised soft questions among neighbors. Some thought she had traveled to visit relatives. Others believed she was resting due to her age. Salongo explained to anyone who asked that his mother was staying with an uncle in another village. His tone remained calm. Mirembe avoided long conversations. She stayed busy with chores, keeping her mind from wandering into guilt. Let us move forward in the days. The couple soon took control of the land. They began selling portions to eager buyers who offered generous prices. Money flowed into their hands with a speed they had never known. They built a larger house. They bought cattle. They gained respect from villagers who admired their success. Some praised their hard work. Others whispered about their sudden wealth, yet no one knew the truth. The couple felt their life rising. Their days filled with prosperity. Their nights filled with quiet relief. They believed the past had vanished inside the forest. They believed nothing would return, but the land carried memories. The forest held secrets, and the village listened to the wind. The new life of Salongo and Mirembe rose like morning mist over Bukasa. Their home expanded with fresh timber and wide windows that opened to the fields. Children from neighboring homes gathered near their compound to watch goats grazing on new grass that had grown around their fence. Villagers admired their progress and often said hard work brings blessings when the heart remains steady. Those words reached the ears of the couple many times, yet each praise touched a hidden wound inside them. Let us move forward. In the days, the fields that once belonged to Nakaten changed shape. Strong men arrived with hoes and cleared the land. Buyers planted new crops. Some built small huts to guard their fields. The land felt alive with activity. Salongo walked through the area with a lifted head, as if the soil now carried his name. Mirembe watched from a distance, protecting a fragile sense of pride that threatened to break at every memory of the old woman who had once tended those same gardens with gentle hands. Evenings in Bukasa carried their usual rhythm. Drums from distant homes echoed softly. Fires burned with slow flames. Families gathered to share food and stories passed down through many generations. Children laughed before sleep. Elders nodded to each other in greeting as night wrapped the village in quiet. Yet inside the home of Salongo and Mirembe, a different kind of silence lived. It was not loud or sharp. It was heavy and patient. As the evening settled one night, a faint sound drifted through the compound of the couple. It was soft, like footsteps moving on dry leaves. The sound reached Mirembe as she prepared sorghum porridge near the fire. The night was calm, without wind, so the movement felt unusual. She stepped outside and looked toward the dark path behind their house. Nothing moved. No shadow or figure, only the night held its breath. For the next few days, similar sounds appeared. Sometimes at dawn just before roosters called. Sometimes at night when only the sound of tree frogs remained awake. Small things began shifting around their home. A clay pot moved from its usual place. A bundle of firewood seemed to rearrange itself. A gourd fell without reason. Villagers spoke of spirits in hushed tones, though not about the couple. These were general whispers that often floated through Bukasa whenever unexplained things happened. But for Salongo and Mirembe, those whispers carried the weight of truth buried beneath their wealth. Let us move forward. In time, the couple tried to ignore what they felt. They focused on their new business ventures. Buyers from nearby towns arrived at their gate seeking harvests and cattle. Salongo walked proudly among them, showing his new herds. His voice often rose with confidence, though inside his chest lived a tightening fear. Mirembe cooked meals for the workers and tried to remain steady. Yet her hands sometimes shook when she listened to distant footsteps that no one else seemed to hear. One morning before sunrise, a villager named Kato walked along the lake path, returning from fishing. He noticed an old woman moving slowly beside the water. Her dress looked worn. Her steps moved without strength. He greeted her, yet she did not answer. She faded into the trees before he could speak again. When he reached the center of the village, he told others about the sighting. Elders listened with curiosity. Some said it must be a traveler. Others said it might be someone lost returning from a distant village. No one mentioned Nakatend because they believed she was resting with relatives far away. But whispers travel faster than truth. Soon a few neighbors mentioned seeing an old woman near the banana groves at dawn. Others said they heard humming like the sound of a mother calming a child. No one felt fear. Instead, they felt mild wonder. Yet these stories reached the ears of Mirembe while she fetched water at the borehole. Her heart tightened. The pot she held slipped slightly, yet she caught it before it fell. Now we step into the next moment. Mirembe returned home with thoughts swirling inside her. She told Salongo about the whispers. His jaw tightened as he sat under the mango tree in their compound. His eyes moved across the land as though expecting a shape to emerge from the banana stems. He told Mirembe to stay calm. He said the villagers were only sharing tales. Yet his voice held a tremor that revealed his fear. Days passed and the whispers grew. More villagers saw the same old woman near the river. They described her as thin with tired eyes. Her steps seemed slow yet purposeful. None could explain where she lived or where she walked from. Some said she came from the forest. Others believed she belonged to a visiting clan. Curiosity grew though no one felt threatened. Let us move forward in the days. The couple's cattle began acting strangely. They crowded near the fence at night as if avoiding something behind the house. Dogs barked toward the banana grove, then retreated with tails lowered. Mirembe could not find sleep. She sat awake through many nights, listening to leaves moving without wind. Salongo stayed silent but kept a spear near the door, though he never claimed fear. One night, as the moon cast pale light over Bukasa, Mirembe looked outside through a small gap in their window. She saw a shape moving near the edge of their compound. The figure appeared old, thin, and slow. Each step left a mark on the ground. The figure paused near the boundary and lifted its head slightly as if sensing the house. Mirembe's breath tightened. Then the figure slipped back into the darkness between banana stems. The next morning, Mirembe avoided speaking about what she saw. Yet her silence carried weight. Salongo noticed her fear, though he pretended not to. He felt the same weight pressing on him, yet he hid behind his pride and the belief that nothing from the past could return. As the evening settled that week, a group of elders gathered near the village meeting tree to discuss small events around Bukasa. Among the topics was the mysterious woman seen walking alone. Elder Mukibi spoke with a steady tone. He said the village should find out who she is and offer help if needed. No one argued. They agreed to search for the woman within the week. This decision reached the ears of Salongo by the next morning. His hands shook slightly as he drank water from a small calabash. He told Mirembe that the village must not find anything near the forest edge. They knew the truth lived somewhere in those trees. The couple feared what might surface. Let us move forward in the day. That afternoon, a faint voice was heard near the marketplace. A young boy claimed he saw the old woman resting under a tree by the lake. He said she looked weak, as though she needed food. The villagers prepared to send help. Before they moved, the boy added that her face looked familiar, though he could not remember where he had seen her. News reached the couple once again. Their hearts beat with a rhythm shaped by fear. They could no longer pretend that the past was buried. The truth seemed to walk closer each day with slow, unbroken steps. Then one morning before sunrise, Bukasa woke to a sound that had not been heard in many seasons. It was a woman's cry carrying through the mist-filled air. Not a cry of pain, a cry of recognition. A fisherwoman returning from the lake had seen the old woman again. This time the woman spoke her name. The name was Nakatend. The name moved through Bukasa like a slow breath that changed the air around every homestead. Nakatend, a name that carried respect and memory. A name believed to be resting far away. Villagers gathered near the lake path to understand the truth behind the fisherwoman's cry. Morning light broke through thin clouds as people whispered softly among themselves. No one raised voices. No one hurried. Every step moved with the weight of uncertainty. Let us move forward in the morning. A small crowd walked toward the place where the old woman had been seen. The earth remained damp from a light night rain. Footprints marked the path leading into a cluster of trees near the shoreline. Some villagers stayed back, keeping distance out of respect. Others stepped closer with caution. A narrow trail led into the shadows of the grove where the sound of water touched the air in gentle waves. Under one of the large trees, they found an old mat. Its fibers looked worn as though it had been used for many days. Beside it lay a small wooden bowl with traces of millet porridge. The bowl felt warm, which meant the woman had been there not long before the crowd arrived. No figure remained. No sound came from the trees. Only the quiet rhythm of nature rested within the space she had left behind. Elders began discussing what should happen next. Some suggested sending a group into the forest to search. Others said the woman needed rest and should not be chased. Elder Mukibi gently guided the conversation. He said that if she truly was Nakaten, the village must prepare to welcome her with respect. He reminded those gathered that she had always been a mother to the community. The villagers nodded in agreement. None of them suspected any darkness behind her disappearance. Their thoughts carried only kindness. These words reached the ears of Salongo and Mirembe through whispers moving between homesteads. They sat inside their enlarged house with fear tightening their bodies. Their wealth surrounded them, yet their hearts felt smaller than before. Mirembe stared at the ground as though seeking a path to escape her thoughts. Salongo walked back and forth across their compound, his steps uneven and restless. The name of his mother echoed inside him with a weight that twisted his mind. Now he stepped into. The next moment, children who had gone to fetch firewood from the forest returned with soft murmurs. They said they saw an old woman walking along the inner path. They said she moved slowly and carried a bundle of leaves on her head. Her eyes looked tired but calm. They said she reminded them of Nakaten, whose smile they remembered from past seasons. The story spread quickly. Even those who doubted began to believe that the old woman was truly the mother of Salongo. As the day stretched forward, another sighting reached the village. A group of women collecting wild greens near the western ridge saw the old woman resting under a small shelter made from branches. She greeted them with a soft nod, then returned to silence. Her clothes looked torn. Her hair carried bits of dried leaves. She did not ask for help, yet she did not refuse it when they offered a cup of water. The women returned to the village with thoughtful faces and shared what they had witnessed. Let us move forward in the afternoon. The sun rose high and cast long shadows across the fields that once belonged to Nakaten. Workers paused from their tasks as rumors of her return flowed toward them. Some had heard stories of elders who vanished for weeks and return after recovering from illness in distant homes. Others believed she may have wandered into the forest after confusion. None guessed the truth. Their hearts remained softened by compassion. Inside the home of Salongo and Mirembe, the atmosphere grew heavy. Mirembe tried to speak, but her words broke into quiet fragments. Each attempt to hide the fear inside her failed. She felt shame tightening around her like cloth bound tightly. Memories of that night in the storm rose again with cold clarity. The sound of rain, the weight of silence, the dark path to the forest, all returned with painful force. As the evening settled, Salongo stepped outside and looked toward the hills where the forest thickened. His breathing slowed as he imagined his mother walking toward the village. With each passing moment, he remembered her voice, her slow steps, her gentle hands. A story he once pushed aside returned to him now like an old song. The land he gained felt heavier than before. While the couple struggled within their home, the villagers prepared to welcome the returning elder. Some cleaned a small shelter near the meeting tree. Others carried mats and warm clothing. A few young women cooked millet and cassava in case she arrived hungry. The village worked together with warm hearts. They believed a mother was finally returning home after suffering in silence. Their kindness rose from the soil like a blessing. Let us move forward in the night. Darkness rested softly over Bukasa. Fires burned outside many homes as villagers exchanged gentle stories. Dogs stayed alert and barked faintly at distant movements. Mirembe sat near her fire with trembling hands. She listened to every sound outside. A moving branch, a shifting leaf, a footstep. Each noise felt like truth approaching her doorstep. Salongo remained awake inside the house, unable to find rest. He sat on a stool staring at the wall as though expecting it to reveal a path out of the storm rising inside him. Just before dawn, the rooster called with a sharper tone than usual. A group of villagers preparing to fetch water from the well noticed a figure walking slowly along the main path. The figure moved with patience. Her dress brushed lightly against the dust. Her posture carried the weight of long days spent wandering through the forest. Her face, though tired, held recognition of the land she stepped upon. It was Nakaten. She reached the well and paused. She placed her hand on the wooden frame as if greeting an old friend. The early light touched her face, revealing scratches, long-healed bruises faded by time, and eyes that had seen suffering without breaking. The villagers gathered with quiet steps. They did not speak at first. Their hearts felt the sacredness of her return. When Elder Mukibi approached, she lifted her gaze. He greeted her with deep respect. She nodded, and her voice rose with the strength of a woman who had lived her truth. She said she had been rescued by forest dwellers who found her near death at the edge of the woodland. They carried her to their hidden settlement where she healed slowly. She remembered little after waking, only pain and the feeling of betrayal. She explained that she did not know how she reached the forest, yet her voice held a calm certainty that she had been harmed by familiar hands. The villagers listened with mixed emotions. Some felt shock, though they kept their voices low. Others felt sorrow. None of them suspected Salongo, yet the story created questions in their minds. They asked her if she knew who had hurt her. She answered that the forest had hidden the memory, but her heart remembered footsteps that felt known and trusted. Now we step into the next moment. The villagers walked with her toward the meeting tree. They prepared a mat and offered her warm food. She rested briefly before speaking again. Her voice remained steady. She asked where her son lived now. Elder Mukibi pointed toward the house of Salongo. She did not speak further. She stood with slow effort and began walking toward her destination. The village watched in silence as the old woman moved along the path. Her steps carried memory. Her presence carried truth. The air felt heavier as she approached the home where her son lived, and wealth built on her absence. Inside that house, fear tightened its grip. Mirembe heard the murmurs outside. Salongo felt the ground shift beneath him as villagers followed behind Nakatend at a respectful distance. The moment of truth approached with slow, steady steps. Morning light spread over Bukasa with a softness that felt different from other days. The village seemed to hold its breath as Nakatend walked toward the house of her son. Her steps were slow, yet each one carried the weight of truth that had slept in the forest for many nights. Villagers followed behind her with quiet hearts. No one pushed forward. No one spoke. They moved with the respect given to elders who carried stories of pain and survival. Salongo stood at the doorway of his large house. His face held a stillness that did not match the storm rising inside him. Mirembe stood slightly behind him, her hands trembling as she held the edge of her shawl. The sight of Nakatend approaching pulled memories from the deepest corners of their minds, memories they had buried with the belief that the earth would keep them hidden forever. Let us move forward in the moment. Nakatend reached the entrance and paused. She looked at the house that now stood where an older, simpler home once rested. She looked at her son, whose eyes avoided hers. She looked at Mirembe, whose breath shook as she attempted to stand firm. For a long moment, no one spoke. Only birds moved through the trees. Only the distant sound of children preparing for school touched the silence. Nakatend lifted her hand slightly, as if touching the air between them. She spoke with a voice shaped by calm strength. She said she had seen death and returned only because strangers in the forest had saved her. She said she remembered being called outside on a night of heavy rain. She remembered two figures stepping into her home with faces she trusted. She remembered cold fear, then darkness. Her voice did not rise. It flowed gently like a river carrying old sorrow. Villagers listened with wide, silent eyes. They turned towards Salongo and Mirembe with growing questions. The couple shifted uncomfortably. The truth began to take shape in the minds of the people, though none spoke of it directly. The weight of Nakatendi's words settled on every heart. Now we step into the next moment. Nakatend asked her son why he had not searched for her. She said weeks had passed. Months had moved with changing rains. Yet he had not sent a single messenger to ask about her well-being. Her voice held no anger, only deep confusion and sadness. Mirembe lowered her head. Salongo swallowed hard. His words failed to rise. Elder Mukibi stepped forward and asked Nakatend if she wished to speak before the village. She nodded with slow certainty. The villagers gathered under the meeting tree where many important matters had been discussed for generations. Mats were placed on the ground. Women brought water. Children sat quietly beside their mothers, sensing the seriousness of the moment. The air carried a stillness that felt heavy yet respectful. Let us move forward under the shade of the meeting tree. Nakatend sat before the village as a mother who had suffered yet returned with strength. She spoke again with steady breath. She explained how strangers found her near the forest border barely alive. She said they tended to her wounds and offered shelter until she could walk again. She described waking with heavy confusion and pain. She spoke of remembering the feeling of strong hands pulling her from her home. She said the faces felt familiar even if the darkness had swallowed their shapes. Villagers listened with growing sadness. They looked toward the couple who stood a short distance away. Mirembe held her shawl tightly. Tears formed in her eyes, though she tried to hide them. Salongo's face lost its strong lines. His shoulders bent under a weight that finally refused to be ignored. As the evening settled, the truth began to soften the walls they had built. Salongo stepped forward and spoke in a broken tone. He admitted that greed had blinded him. He admitted that he had lost his way. His voice trembled with regret. Mirembe followed with her own confession. She spoke of hunger and desperation. She admitted fear had pushed her to follow a path that destroyed her peace. Their words carried weakness, not strength. Yet the village listened calmly, without shouts or judgment. The story unfolded slowly, as truth does when it has been buried for too long. Let us move into the next moment. Nakaten listened to their confessions with eyes that held deep hurt. She did not shout. She did not curse. She said only that betrayal from one's own blood is a wound that the heart remembers even when the mind tries to forget. Her words fell gently yet firmly, like seeds planted in soil that would never again be the same. The village elders stood. They spoke among themselves in low tones, reflecting on the weight of the situation. When they finished, they addressed the people. They said the matter must be handled with wisdom. They said no one should allow anger to rule the heart. Instead, they would follow old traditions that guided conflicts rooted in family. They would gather again the next morning to decide how reparations should be made. That night, Bukasa felt different. Fires flickered softly in each homestead. Families discussed the events quietly. Children asked careful questions. Elders spoke of the danger of greed. The wind moved through the banana groves with a sound that felt like the forest remembering the truths it had witnessed. Inside their large house, Salongo and Mirembe sat in silence. Wealth surrounded them, yet their hearts felt empty. The walls that once symbolized progress now echoed with guilt. They could not escape the memory of the night they chose darkness over compassion. They could not silence the sound of Nakatendi's voice. They felt the weight of the village watching them with solemn eyes. Let us move forward to the next morning. The elders gathered again under the meeting tree. Villagers formed a respectful circle. Nakaten sat on a mat near the center, her hands resting gently on her knees. The couple stood nearby with trembling bodies. Elder Mukibi spoke with a voice shaped by wisdom. He said, "Every person who walks the earth faces moments where the heart is tested. Some pass these moments with honor. Others fall into mistakes that carry heavy consequences." He said the couple must face their actions with humility and accept whatever path the village chose for healing. The elders decided that Nakaten would reclaim the remainder of her land, though it now carried scars from the past months. They declared that the couple must surrender their new wealth to the community as repayment for the wrong committed. The cattle would be redistributed among needy families. The large house would be converted into a place where travelers and widows could find shelter. The couple would move to a smaller home near the edge of the village and begin their life again from the soil upward. The decision did not bring celebration. It brought a quiet sense of balance. The community accepted it with calm hearts. Nakaten nodded slowly, showing she agreed with the path laid before them. Now we step into the closing moments. Salongo and Mirembe moved to their new simple home with their heads lowered but their spirits beginning to understand the meaning of true humility. Their days grew quieter. Their nights brought reflection. They worked in small gardens and fetched water like the rest of the villagers. The wealth they once chased faded into memory. Nakaten often walked along the path at sunset. She looked at the hills and the fields that had shaped her life. She carried pain yet also carried strength. Villagers greeted her with deep respect. She returned their greetings with the calm dignity she had always carried. In time, the village spoke less about the couple's betrayal. They spoke more about the lesson taught by their downfall. A lesson that reminded every heart that land and wealth gain meaning only when earned through honesty. A lesson that showed how a mother's return can reveal truths hidden beneath fear and greed. The empire the couple built with darkness crumbled in the light of truth. Yet from those ruins new wisdom rose across Bukasa, and the village moved forward with steady hearts, guided by the story of an elder who returned from the forest carrying truth stronger than silence.